Want to start this talk by referencing a quote that has served on my life's journey. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Dave Ramsey, but he is the founder and CEO over Financial Peace University. And we had an opportunity to go through the Financial Peace University course while we were trying to get our finances in order. And one of his famous quotes that he charges the course to live by is to live like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else. It is from a financial perspective that he gives this quote, but for me, it has a different tie to it. And so I'm going to walk you along that journey. I am born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, to two parents, to Kenneth and Anita Brown. I am the only child to my parents. I had a traditional upbringing, two-parent household, middle class, working family, and my dad was a no-nonsense type of guy. Strict in his delivery, but very, very, very loving. He was a car salesman turned police officer, and he was seen to me as my hero. Without question, he was super strict about boys, if you could imagine. Being his only baby, super strict about boys. And in the 6th grade, we had to have a group project, and one young fellow by the name of Robert decided to call my home and said, said he would call the house and talk about the project. Well, I didn't get to the phone quick enough. Dad picked up the phone, and Dad said, "Who is this? Why are you calling my daughter?" And he said, "Well, you know, we have this project and just need to talk with her about what we're going to do and how we're going to structure this project." And he says, "Young man, let me speak to your parents." And I'm saying, "Dad, it's just a friend. It's just a friend. Don't trip out. It's okay." And talked with his parents and wanted to know, why this young man is calling my daughter. And, his parents just reiterated the fact that it's nothing inappropriate. He just wanted to call about the project. And so that's just a little background with regards to how strict of a house bringing that I came up in. But I can tell you to this day, me and Robert are still good friends. Nevertheless, I was a daddy's girl. K for Kenisha, K for Kenneth. So we established what we call K and K days. And these were days that we would just hang out. It would just be he and I. We would go to the movies. We would go breakfast. We would go to the mall and do shopping. We would go, there was a local theme park that's in Louisville. We would go go-kart riding. And we would just simply hang out the entire day because he knew the importance of showing his daughter the type of love that she needed for her future. Because of this, we also had a mutual love for sports, and this is where my love and passion for sports first began. My father had an opportunity to play college basketball at Kentucky State University, but we also went to games, engaged, watched TV, watched games together, and this is where my love for sports first came. During these games, I also had an opportunity to go with my grandparents, whose church hosted church league basketball games. And so I get to go with them, hang out on a Friday night, and I was actually placed into the concession stand to help run it. Funny, I was only 8 or maybe 9 years old at the time, but they affectionately gave me the nickname of Miss Brown because they knew how swiftly and efficiently I was moving through the concession stand, even being a young girl. I say this to you because in trying to find your passion and your purpose, sometimes it's things that go back to your childhood. So take the opportunity to reflect on things that came effortlessly to you. That may be the direction that God is trying to take you to. You may not see it in the moment, but somewhere along your life's journey, it's going to come back up. It wasn't until turmoil struck and hit. My parents, unfortunately, their marriage did not survive, and they did get a divorce when I was 10 years old. Because I love my father so much, I was given the option of whom I wanted to live with, and I chose to live with my dad. Though I love my mother very dearly, our relationship became strained because she, at times, decided to do other things than to spend time with me. And so that strained our relationship. On Wednesday, March 17th of 1999, my world came to a crashing halt. I was pulled out of school to be told that my father was rushed to the hospital from having suffered a brain aneurysm on the job. Those 3 days that led up to his unforeseen passing were a nightmare. I did not know what I was going to do. I periodically went into the room to see him just laying there, almost lifeless. His aneurysm paralyzed him in the beginning on one right side. And so he could hear me, and I would say, "Hey, Dad, Kenisha's here." And he could squeeze one side of his arm, but he couldn't squeeze the other side. He began to have seizures through the night. And on Saturday morning of March 20th, we got the last phone call to get to the hospital because he was declared brain dead. So in that moment, being 12 years old, myself and my grandmother, who I call Mima, and who you will later hear me call as best friend, had to make the decision to let him go. It was hard. It was difficult, but I had to say goodbye. From that moment, life just didn't become easy. This was the first opportunity that I began to deal with depression. I went days without eating. I locked myself in my room because my best friend was gone. I even attempted suicide by way of a butter knife. Now, I didn't know any better, and so I can chuckle about it now. but I did. I had the thought of it, and I acted on it. But to God be the glory, I'm still here. Amen. I lived with my Mima until I eventually made the decision to transition and to live with my mother. When I made that decision, she and I had a conversation together, and I said, "Mom, look, I know what has happened in the past, but I want us to get past that. The only thing that I would ask of you is that you would choose not to date or have any interaction with men until I leave for college." I knew I was going away because I wanted to. And so I just asked her if she could do me that favor, because if we had to go through the same thing we went through again, I'd probably run away. And she agreed. She agreed. She said, I understand. I know why you're saying this. And so she agreed. But of course, as soon as I moved into college, things changed. After graduating, I attended the University of Kentucky. Go Wildcats. That was my lifelong dream. I wanted to be a Kentucky Wildcat, and I knew that I wanted to work in medicine, but I didn't know to what degree. Things were going well, and unfortunately, I received a phone call that my mother was first diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. It shook my world. She chose to have a lumpectomy instead of a mastectomy, which in hindsight probably wasn't the wisest decision, but it was her decision, and she felt that in that moment that's what she wanted to do. She knew she wasn't remarried yet, and she chose just to have a lumpectomy. And I'm going to insert a plug here to say, ladies, please make sure that you're having your annual mammograms. At the age of 18, this is when I first became a caregiver. The University of Kentucky is about an hour away from Louisville, so I found myself up and down the highway very often to be with her, be by her side. I rarely missed appointments, but it took its toll on me, as you can imagine. My grades suffered. I pretty much flunked every fall semester because her cancer came back every fall semester. I had friends and family to support me, and was eternally grateful for their support, but there's something about being alone in your room by yourself during the quiet moments. And in those moments, that's when I had to get back to my faith. Okay, Lord, you let me see through my father's passing. You got to see me through this. I'm trusting you. I'm leaning on you. I'm dependent on you. So I need you to see me through this. In 2007, this is when everything came to a crashing halt, and it came to a head. This was the third time that her cancer had returned, and it had metastasized to her brain. Not only had it traveled to her brain, but it did travel down to her lungs as well. The doctors gave us an option and said, we can do surgery, see what happens, or we cannot. Basically, it was a 50-50 chance for survival either way. My grandmother, her mother, and I both decided that let's just go ahead and have the surgery. Let's just see what happens. During this time, the calendar had turned July, and my uncle was in a motor vehicle accident, which he was killed from July 4th weekend. The night of his wake, something had come over me. There was a spirit that came over me and that said, Kenisha, this is going to be the night that your mother goes to glory. So while dealing with one side of the family at a wake, preparing for a funeral the next day, I also had the looming feeling that tonight will be the night that she goes to glory. And because I felt that way, and I told my grandparents this, I said, I'm going to stay the night tonight. I'm going to be here. The night came, we stayed, we played soft gospel music, we talked with her, we prayed with her. And in that moment, I whispered in her ear and I said, I love you. I'm going to be okay. You have my permission. That was the hardest thing ever. And about 2:18 in the morning, she made her transition. And in that moment, by definition, I became an orphan. Life has been hard. It was emotional. We had to sell our home, all of the possessions, and I moved in with my aunt at the time, her sister, for the remainder of the summer until school began. School started almost exactly 1 month after her passing. Upon reflection, entering back into life, I know that I did it way too soon. Way too soon. I didn't give myself permission to grieve, and I struggled to find a new normal. I went back into life as if everything was the same. I went back to a full schedule. I worked in the bookstore. I was a student athletic trainer, and I was a new member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Again, sadly, my world came to a halt again. In September, my grandfather, whom I love dearly, after a very long battle with diabetes, made his transition. And I'll never forget having to understand and to endure the fact that I'd lost my uncle, my mother, and my grandfather all pretty much within 2 months, what I was dealing with. So at the time, while I was an athletic trainer for the women's basketball team, I needed to go home. I just needed to hug family, be around family, and just get that support because, again, even being an hour away from home, it just felt so far. And I approached my supervisor then and said, hey, I need to go home. I'll be back, just want to go home for the weekend. And they told me no. So in that very moment, I took out my keys, I took out my swipe card, I unhooked it, and I gave it to them, and I left. And I drove home. But when I got home, I made a pit stop to Walgreens, and I picked up a bottle of sleeping pills. And I said, I can't do this. I cannot do this anymore. And my then boyfriend at the time, I sent a text message and I said, I can't. And I turned off my phone and I took those pills and I went to sleep. And I hoped that I didn't wake up. But I did. To God be the glory. But when I woke up in a mental hospital. I had been transported to a mental hospital, and obviously I was on suicide and psychiatric watch. Though it was devastating in the moment, it was actually transformational. That was the period where everything shifted for me. In that moment at this hospital, it literally felt like jail. They locked the bathroom doors at night. You could only have 1 hour visitations per day. They had pay phones where you could only make a 3-minute phone call and then you had to rotate. But because my family loves me so much, they snuck my cell phone in. They did. They did. When I had to take medicine, they looked in your mouth. They checked under your tongue. Wanted to make sure you took it. It was horrible. It was horrible. But in that moment, the takeaway for me was I got to see everybody else around me who were suffering with different issues. And though things were really bad for me, other people had it worse. And so that was the takeaway, that not always what we're going through, it could be worse. And so that was the moment that I came to the realization that, okay, I'm going to be okay. So eventually I was released and went back to school. But again, in the moment, I just realized that this is too far. I cannot be here anymore. I need to be closer to my family where my support is, and I need to go home. So, and my friends are going to laugh, I committed the ultimate sin, and I transferred to the University of Louisville. If you ask me this outside of this room, I will deny it, I promise you. I graduated from UK. But because I failed so many classes, I was told it's going to take at least another 3 years for you to graduate. And I knew in my mind I didn't have 3 years. I need to get out now or I'm going to quit. I'm going to figure out some other way of living, making money, probably not a righteous way. So I need to get out of school quickly. And so I changed my major from exercise science to go into athletic training into sports administration and the production side of sports. And because doing that, I was told I could get out in a year and a half. Boom, I could do that. So going through that program, I had to have an internship. If you know anything about the Midwest, Kentucky area, the winters are very dark, very cold. It puts you in a depression state, just being in that atmosphere. And I decided that I need to have an internship away from here. I need to get out, see the world, explore my possibilities, and just see what the world has for me. So I applied coast to coast, different NFL teams, different NBA teams, college teams, and thought to myself, well, wait a minute, what about those bowl games? What about, I see the national championships for college and the Rose Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl and the Orange Bowl and all these different bowls. What about them? And so I went on a pursuit and I reached out to them as well. Pretty much out of, let's say, 100 applications, the Orange Bowl was one of the ones that came back and said, we want you. I said, all right, okay, I'm moving to Miami. What I wasn't prepared for was that this was an unpaid internship. So I am uprooting myself. I am moving from Kentucky to a place I've never been before with no income coming in, on a hope, a dream, but most importantly on faith. And so I said yes. And so I took my savings and I packed up my truck and I moved to Miami for 5 months. And that right there is the start of my sports career. I loved it, loved everything about it. Knew networking was important, did that. The Orange Bowl was actually played inside of Dolphin Stadium where the Miami Dolphins play. So I had opportunities to meet different people. Game was over, came back home, graduated, and said, I'm getting back to Miami. I don't know how, but I'm going back to the sun. Love the ocean, going back. And thankfully, because of those contacts and those connections, I was able to land a position with the Miami Dolphins. So I moved and I enrolled in Nova Southeastern University in pursuit of my master's degree. Again, it was a complete leap of faith, but I knew God had me. I knew God had plans for me. I knew that there was a purpose in this journey, and so I just followed him. While in Miami, around 2010, I met this gentleman named Dennis Alexander. And on April 28th, 2012, we were married. And September 14th of 2012, Miss Riley came. But in all that good stuff, something was still missing. I was still feeling unfulfilled. I was still struggling. I was still falling in and out of depression at times. and just couldn't make sense of what was happening. So I questioned God a lot. I did the ultimate, why me? You took my mom, you took my dad, you took my grandfather. Why am I still struggling? Why is it that I still can't get to the other side? Why can't I see the joy of life? Why am I still struggling in my finances? Why am I not quite happy in my career? Lord, what are you doing? And I know I'm not by myself in this. I know sometimes we find ourselves questioning God. He's just sitting back, I think, with his arms folded, just saying, just wait on me. Just keep trusting me and wait on me. I got you, but you got to trust me. So feeling that there was no more purpose in Miami, I had moved as high as I felt I could move. Being in Miami, I said, I want to move. I don't want to be in Miami anymore. I'm ready to go. At this time, my Mima, my best friend, her health was beginning to fail. And when I say best friend, I mean like this. Her health was beginning to decline, and I threw myself into the role of caregiver once again. So I found myself flying back and forth, just to be with her, just to give her a smile on her face, just to see about her, make sure she's doing okay. But it became expensive. So again, I came back to my husband. I said, we've got to move. I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going to move. Ain't got funny. And obviously, there became some pushback, but eventually, God gave us a sneak peek of what was to come. So when Dennis got on board, he began to apply. He began to apply for different positions. And we all know, I'm sure I'm not the only one in here who has applied for a job online and you get that dreaded, we regret to inform you that we've selected someone else for this position, right? We've all been there. So he did the same thing. He applies online and we're like, okay, we'll just see what happens. 1 week later, he gets a phone call for an interview. Nobody knows him. All right, so we had to come up to Atlanta anyways. And I neglected to say I wanted to move to Atlanta. We had to come to Atlanta anyways, for a graduation. So we structured it to where he could do the interview at the same time. The interview was at Lakeside High School. And he went, and they loved him. And they were impressed. And they offered him the job on the spot. Right? All right, God, you must be in this. So, with that being said, we knew, okay, Atlanta's the place. Here we come. We transitioned and we moved up here. And almost immediately, as soon as we got here, best friend took a fall, broke her ankle, and never recovered. If you have not known, when the elderly take a fall, it's really tough to recover from. Bed sores begin to develop. They don't want to move, so the circulation begins to decline. And that is exactly what happened. I had never seen it before, but it happened very quickly. It was a very rapid decline. And so 1 year and 4 months after moving to Atlanta, I'm going to get through this.
All right.
On December 30th, best friend left me. Sorry. She left me, and I'm still dealing with it. It's only been 2 years. It'll be 2 years in December. But I know that she's with me just like my parents are with me, and I'm going to be all right. Not sure if anybody else feels like this, but when you've dealt with a loss and when their anniversary comes around, it begins to get tough. You begin to anticipate that particular date, right? So for me, I always dread July. July 13th is when my mother passed. And so I always just dread, like, oh God, here's July. Okay, July 2nd, July 9th, July 10th, 11th, 12th. And even something in my spirit will wake me up in the middle of the night, almost to the exact time that she passed, because I was there. I literally watched my mother's breath leave her body. So anniversaries are typically hard for me. But last year, 2017, I got to a place where I said, okay, what can we do different? I think, not that I'm okay, but I think that I'm ready to do something different. I think that I'm ready to embrace something better. How can I make this a day not of mourning, but of celebration? Yeah. And so, long conversations with God, and I said, what can I do? And he said, I want you to celebrate you. I want you to celebrate the fact that you've been through a lot. You've lost your parents, but you're still standing. You've graduated with a bachelor's. You've graduated with a master's. You got married. You have a child. You have a home. You breathe. You walk.
That's right.
You have people that love you.
Amen.
Don't be afraid to celebrate you. It's okay. It hurts. You'll forever miss your parents. But it's okay to celebrate you. And in that moment, I said, okay, Lord, that'll be my new normal going forward. And so in my quiet time, I still went back to questioning, like, okay, God, I understand this sounds really good, but why? Why did you put me through this so young? Why did you allow me to be 21 and an orphan? And he said to me clear as day, I put you through this early enough so that you would be in the position to help others. I needed you to be ready, both emotionally, physically, spiritually, so that when others are going through what you've been through, you'll be able to confidently navigate them through it. And so with that became the birth of Season of Hope. I reflected on my time as being a caregiver, and I said, what did I go through in that moment that I feel could have been different? And just sitting back thinking, I felt like I didn't have anyone that could relate to what I was going through. Because here I am as a college student, away from home, and I have friends and sorority sisters who loved me and supported me and could empathize with me. But no one really truly understood what these shoes felt like to walk in. And so I felt like that there weren't many organizations that I could be a part of that would help individuals through that process. Because there were so many organizations for my mother to get what she needed, the motivation, inspiration, the connection. But I just didn't feel like there was a connecting point for caregivers, because caregivers need care too. You're busy taking care of your loved ones. You're probably a spouse, have a full-time job, maybe children, but then you lose you in that process. And so I said, okay, that's what it is. I want to start an organization that will bring caregivers together so they can unite with one another, talk, vent, get release, and feel like they're not alone in this. And so that was the birth of Season of Hope. Season of Hope also has play on words. So seasons is, everything in life is a season, just like the turn of the season, winter, spring, summer, fall, right? But also in the Bible says everything happens in a season. We're not always where we are. We're either coming out of a season, going into one. And so that's the caregiver journey. You're not always going to be a caregiver, and you may not be one. You're probably going to be one to someone that you love. And then hope is play on words, as it's the acronym for having only positive expectations. Wow. That all you need is just a little bit of hope, just like a mustard seed of faith, to get you through. And so that's how Season of Hope was born. During the time, I said, okay, I don't want to linger on it. I don't want to sit on it. I don't want to play with it. I want to get moving. I want to get going. I want to do something. And so I decided, well, let's just celebrate caregivers. Why don't we have a day just for them? And so I started Caregiver Day Out brunches and started Caregiver Day Out brunch tour, because I said I'm going to make this a nationally recognized organization. And so why don't I start with the cities that I've lived in? So November 21st of 2017, I hosted the very first Caregiver Day Out brunch in Louisville, Kentucky. And the Caregiver Day Out brunch includes, and it's completely free, it includes massages, vendor shopping, lots of shopping, a beauty bar, a free brunch buffet, as well as a speaker panel that will talk on topics like financial planning, self-care and mental health, and elder law planning. And that's your estates, that's powers of attorneys, making sure you have the business side of your loved ones and your own affairs in order. And so hosted the very first brunch in November, hosted the second brunch here in Atlanta in April, and then, to God be the glory, last week hosted the Miami Caregiver Day Out brunch. And so I set a goal, and God provided. God made a way, and He has done it. And this is just 1 year of having Season of Hope born. So this has been my story. This has been my life's journey. This has been my way to finding purpose. A friend, well, actually my childhood best friend, said to me when I was struggling trying to find purpose, she said to me, "How do you think MAD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, was born?" And she said that was birthed out of tragedy. Mm-hmm. She said that your purpose, you know, it may not be something glamorous, so to speak. It may be just birthed out of your story, out of your testimony. And with that, you know, that's what sparked this, and that's what's given me the drive to keep going, because I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the caregivers that come behind me. And so finding your purpose is finding that thing that makes life worth living. It is tapping into that thing that is bigger than you. It is something that resonates deep down inside. They always say, if you can do it for free, then you know that's probably your passion. That's what I would charge you to figure out within yourself. Is this what can I do this without ever receiving a check for it? But God is so good that He's allowed me to see both purpose and passion. Though my purpose is Season of Hope, though my purpose is in my walk, my journey, and everything that I've been through, I really do have a passion for sports. I thrive in the environment. I'm a sports girl at heart. I probably won't wear heels again this month. I love my Nike, I love my sweats, and God told me, if you just trust me, He says, I'll give you the desires of your heart. And He has shown me and proven Himself to show that passion and purpose can coexist. And so not only am I the founder and CEO of Season of Hope, but I'm also an athletic director here at a private school. I'm also working for a traveling basketball organization called Point Guard College. Literally catching a flight in the morning to go to another camp. But it's my passion, it's the thing that keeps me going. And I know that God allowed me to see both sides. He strategically aligns everything. I knew that I was going to be working for Point Guard College when I wanted to do my camp. And it just so happened that I didn't have a camp the week that I scheduled the Miami Caregiver Brunch. That's nothing but God. I didn't have to do any moving, changing. Oh gosh, can I move the date? I didn't have to do anything. It was already aligned. Amen. Because they gave me a schedule and I had to say yes or no. And when I looked at the schedule, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't even have to do a camp the week that I want to do my brunch. That's nothing but you, Lord. Yeah. So in this season, He has definitely shown me that passion and purpose can coexist. So, and I thought too, I said, well, Lord, do I have to give this up because I know I found my purpose? Like, I love sports. I love that atmosphere. Do I have to sacrifice that because I know this is you? And again, with his arms folded, I really felt like he said, if you just trust me, I will do it.
Amen.
But you've got to fully and completely give it over to me. Let me have it, and I can show you, but I can tell you. And so literally I am walking in it. 2018 has been a head swimming blessing year for myself and my family. We've made a lot of changes, but we've also said, God is yours. And every time we said, God is yours, he's provided.
Amen.
I am eternally grateful. I'm thankful for this opportunity. I'm thankful that I've been able to share this testimony. I will say to you, what's coming forward is we're doing more brunches. I hope to do a caregiver day out retreat next year. I try to think of the things that I wish that I had and hope that if there's someone who wants to be a part of this, then we'll welcome you. I actually have a sign-up list out in the lobby if there's anyone that's interested. If you are a caregiver, we have a monthly newsletter where we provide tips, inspirations to help you get through your journey. And again, I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.